As global travel continues to evolve, certain restrictions remain in place for U.S. citizens due to diplomatic tensions, safety concerns, or legal barriers. In 2025, the United States government enforces travel bans or advisories on specific countries where American citizens are either outright prohibited from visiting or strongly discouraged from traveling. These restrictions are primarily implemented to ensure the safety of travelers and to comply with international policies. This article explores the 10 countries that Americans are not allowed or strongly discouraged from visiting in 2025, detailing the reasons behind these restrictions and the potential consequences of ignoring them. Number 1. North Korea. Prior to 2017, a few brave souls could visit North Korea through guided tours from China, via direct flights from Beijing, or over the Yalu River by train from the border city of Dandong. North Korea's isolationist stance, the result of a political doctrine called Juche, along with ongoing tensions with the U.S., largely contributed to the travel restrictions. But now, North Korea is top of the list for countries Americans can't travel to easily. The current travel ban started with the heartbreaking and cautionary tale of Otto Warmbier, a young American who experienced the severe consequences of this nation's rigid political system firsthand. Warmbier, a University of Virginia student, visited North Korea as part of a guided tour in late 2015. In early 2016, he was arrested at Pyongyang International Airport while attempting to depart. The North Korean government accused Warmbier of committing a hostile act against the state by allegedly attempting to steal a propaganda poster from his hotel. After a 1-hour trial, Warmbier was sentenced to 15 years of hard labor. His case underscores the extreme risks and potential for arbitrary detention that American travelers face when visiting North Korea. Sadly, Warmbier's situation turned even more tragic. In June 2017, after 17 months in captivity, North Korea released him, but he returned to the U.S. in a coma with severe brain damage. He passed away 6 days later. Warmbier's case resulted in increased tensions between the U.S. and North Korea and led to a U.S. travel ban to North Korea for American citizens as of July 2017. Travelers attempting to visit North Korea must obtain special permission from the U.S. government, which is rarely granted. Violating this ban can lead to passport invalidation and legal consequences upon return to the United States. Number 2. Afghanistan. Reason for ban: ongoing armed conflict, terrorism, and lack of U.S. diplomatic presence. Since the Taliban takeover in August 2021, Afghanistan has remained on the U.S. State Department's Do Not Travel list. The country is plagued by extremist groups, including ISIS-K, which has targeted foreigners. Additionally, there is no functioning U.S. embassy, making it extremely difficult for Americans to receive consular assistance. Afghanistan has long been one of the most volatile regions in the world, with an ever-present risk of terrorist attacks, suicide bombings, and kidnappings. Foreigners, particularly Westerners, are viewed as prime targets by militant groups. The Taliban's strict enforcement of conservative Islamic laws further complicates matters, as Americans, especially women, may face severe legal consequences for actions that are otherwise considered normal. The U.S. infrastructure in Afghanistan is also severely damaged due to decades of conflict, making transportation, medical care, and basic services unreliable. Roads are often controlled by different militant factions, making travel outside of major cities exceptionally dangerous. Any Americans who choose to enter Afghanistan are at risk of being detained, harmed, or worse. Number 3. Iran. Reason for ban: risk of arbitrary arrest and diplomatic tensions. Iran has a history of detaining U.S. citizens on espionage charges, often using them as political bargaining tools. In 2025, tensions between the U.S. and Iran remain high, leading to continued travel restrictions. Dual citizens are particularly at risk, as Iran does not recognize dual nationality and may prevent them from accessing U.S. consular services. American travelers in Iran face a high risk of being accused of spying, even if they are simply visiting as tourists. The Iranian government has been known to conduct arbitrary arrests, and in many cases, detainees face long and harsh prison sentences under questionable legal proceedings. Iran's judiciary system is known for its lack of transparency, and there have been multiple cases where American detainees were denied access to legal representation or contact with their families. Additionally, Iran's geopolitical tensions with the U.S. mean that diplomatic solutions for detained Americans can be slow or nearly impossible. The U.S. government strongly discourages travel to Iran, especially given the unpredictability of its government's actions toward foreigners. Furthermore, economic sanctions against Iran may limit the ability of American travelers to access financial services or other essential needs while in the country. Number 4, Iraq. Reason for ban: terrorism, civil unrest, and the presence of armed groups. Iraq continues to be a volatile region with frequent terrorist attacks, kidnappings, and armed conflicts. The presence of militias, some of which are hostile to Westerners, makes it an extremely dangerous destination for U.S. citizens. Despite efforts to stabilize the country, Iraq remains a battleground for various militant groups, including remnants of ISIS. Suicide bombings, drone strikes, and assassinations are common, making any travel outside secured areas incredibly risky. Americans in particular are often viewed as high-value targets for kidnappings, with ransom demands running into millions of dollars. Furthermore, Iraq's government has struggled to maintain control over all its territories, leading to lawlessness in some regions. Corruption within law enforcement also means that Americans cannot rely on local authorities for protection or legal recourse if they face threats or violence. Even humanitarian workers and journalists are at risk in Iraq, and travel to the country is highly discouraged. Number 5, Syria. Reason for ban: civil war, terrorism, and chemical weapon use. Syria has been in a state of war for over a decade, with multiple factions fighting for control. The presence of ISIS, ongoing airstrikes, and chemical attacks make it one of the most dangerous places in the world. U.S. citizens are advised against travel, as the government cannot offer assistance. The Syrian conflict has resulted in a humanitarian catastrophe, with millions displaced and countless lives lost. Foreigners, especially Americans, are at risk of being kidnapped by terrorist groups that seek high-profile hostages for ransom or propaganda. Even within areas controlled by the government, the risk of arbitrary detention is high, particularly for those suspected of having any Western affiliations. Number 6, Yemen. Reason for ban: armed conflict, famine, and terrorism. Yemen is experiencing one of the worst humanitarian crises in the world due to an ongoing civil war. The presence of Houthi rebels, Saudi-led coalition airstrikes, and terrorist organizations like al-Qaeda make it extremely unsafe for American travelers. Foreigners are often targeted for kidnappings, and U.S. citizens in Yemen face a high likelihood of being caught in conflict zones. Additionally, the country's healthcare system has largely collapsed, meaning medical assistance is scarce. Number 7, South Sudan. Reason for ban: armed conflict, humanitarian crisis, and crime. South Sudan is plagued by ongoing civil conflict, ethnic violence, and extreme poverty. The U.S. Department of State warns that the lack of infrastructure and reliable medical services makes travel to the country highly risky. American travelers who enter South Sudan risk facing extreme violence, lawlessness, and a government unable to maintain control over large portions of the country. Number 8, Libya. Reason for ban: armed conflict, crime, and lack of a stable government. Libya has been in a state of turmoil since the fall of Muammar Gaddafi in 2011. Various militant groups control different parts of the country, leading to lawlessness, kidnappings, and violent crime. The U.S. does not have an active diplomatic presence in Libya, making travel highly dangerous. Number 9, Mali. Reason for ban: terrorist activities and kidnappings targeting Westerners. Mali has become a hotspot for extremist groups linked to al-Qaeda and ISIS. These groups frequently target foreigners for kidnappings and attacks. Number 10, Somalia. Reason for ban: piracy, terrorism, and lack of effective governance. Somalia remains one of the most dangerous countries in the world for American travelers due to rampant terrorism, ongoing civil unrest, and piracy off the coast. Conclusion: traveling is an incredible way to experience different cultures, but safety should always come first. The 10 countries listed above pose significant risks for American travelers due to factors such as political instability, armed conflict, terrorism, and lack of U.S. diplomatic presence. Ignoring travel bans or warnings can have serious consequences, including imprisonment, kidnapping, or even death. If you're considering international travel, always check the latest advisories from the U.S. Department of State and choose destinations that ensure your safety and well-being. By staying informed and making responsible travel decisions, you can enjoy global experiences while minimizing risks. Safe travels.